All right, so I'm going to quickly introduce Juan Aguilar. So I've known Juan since I started coming out here.
It's 2003, right?
Yeah, 2003.
That was my first year too.
Yeah, excellent. There we go. It's our first year. Next year we'll be celebrating 20 years coming out here. And it's been amazing. So normally I get if there's a scientist on staff or doing research here, I'll pull them in for a lecture, like have one professional lecture for you guys. But then I was like, hold on a second, there's not always a lecturer here. And the people here are doing such interesting, amazing things as well. As kind of a hobby, but it's like not just a hobby for Juan. This is kind of like feeds him and his wife and his friends, I've seen that happen over and over again. And he's just honed his skill of fishing underwater with a spear gun. And I was like, let's get Juan to get a lecture together. And so we started this about 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah. And it's been so wonderful to have him talk to you guys, and the response has been great, and it's a great way blends like a hobby to sustainable fishing and farming. And Juan will explain to you what I really mean about that in the best way possible. So, Juan.
Thank you, Anand. Hi everyone, my name is Juan-Carlos Aguilar. I am, of course, one of the staff members here at the Wrigley Marine Science Center. I've been on staff since 2003, back when Anand first started coming out here. I did actually housekeeping for 10 years and scrubbed all the toilets, made all the beds, did all that stuff for a long time, and busted my chops, and then eventually moved down to the waterfront and became a boat captain, and now basically one of the two main guys down there running the boats back and forth. And you guys saw me, I was doing your chase boat today, trying to keep everybody safe.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, I saw the crazy jet skiers coming at you. I was like, oh gosh, it's mayhem, it happens out there, but that's what we want to do, is keep you safe. And I'll go a little bit about safety and spearfishing as well, because it's a very highly dangerous sport. But a little bit more about me. I've been spearfishing since basically I moved to the island in 2001. I got into it one day. This guy pulled up a giant white sea bass and just laid it on the table, and I said, "What is that?" And he said, "It's a sea bass." I said, "Well, where did you get it?" Obviously, he said the ocean. And I said, "Well, how did you get it?" He said, "I spearfished it." I was like, "Well, how do you do that?" Well, he told me about pole spearing and using spear guns and holding your breath and all this stuff. And mind you, I was already really into the ocean since I was knee-high to a June bug. I grew up in San Diego, got scuba certified when I was 15, so I've been in the water pretty much my entire life. And so when he told me that I could actually harvest this stuff from the ocean, I said, well, how do I get into it? He said, go buy yourself a pole spear, learn the regulations, buy your license, and then start small. And that was, 21 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since, and I've gotten pretty good at it. Won a couple tournaments. I'm also a free dive instructor. I'm also the president of the Long Beach Neptunes, the longest currently active spearfishing club in the world, going on 70 plus years. We have a group of about 75 members, plus some life members, and they're world-renowned divers and some of the best people in the world. We're actually located right here in Long Beach. If you guys ever want to come to a meeting, they're first Wednesdays of every month, and it's a lot of fun. They're open to the public, and we usually have some really awesome guest speakers talking all sorts of, I think the next one we have is a lady who specializes in turtle research. So she'll be coming and talking about all the work that she does with turtles and all that kind of stuff. So she knows her stuff, I know my stuff. So again, this is a spearfishing and sustainable fishing lecture. A couple quick questions for you guys. Who eats fish here? Raise your hands. Quite a few of you. All right. Who eats sushi here? Oh yeah, a lot of good sushi eaters. I love that stuff. I am definitely one of those guys, and a couple quick questions for you guys. Who actually knows where their fish comes from? This guy, this lady, this guy, all right. It always goes a lot further down. So it's one thing you should always ask wherever you're eating fish at is, hey, where does this fish come from? Where in the world? Whose fish? Who caught the fish? How was it caught? There's all these questions that you can ask to learn more about what you're eating. Knowing where your food comes from is a big part of connecting with nature and understanding where you're getting your sustenance from. Being able to know who caught it, when it was caught, how it was taken care of is a luxury, but it's definitely something that should be more actively pursued. I think being connected with your food will make you appreciate it that much more, and especially when you are eating meat, you got to know you're taking a life, so you need to really appreciate that life that you're taking. It's very hard in today's world to be connected with your food. Most everything's already come in a package and you never see how it's taken. So there is going to be a little bit of graphic content in here, but trust me, this is the most humane way of fishing that exists. If you think about it, I'll talk a little bit about different methods that are definitely not as humane, but in essence, we're trying to do ourselves and the fish a favor and dispatch it as quickly and humanely as possible. And it also affects the quality of the fish you end up on your plate. Couple things. Oh gosh, it's going haywire. It's just this thing.
Pointer.
No, my HDMI connection is not the best. She's an 8-year-old computer, poor thing. Anyways, freediving and harvesting through the ages. Obviously, humankind has been using and utilizing the ocean for protein and various other food sources for millennia. It started, of course, when we realized that, hey, there's food and you can eat stuff from the ocean. There's evidence of divers far back in the Egyptian times, the Mayans. Everybody who lived next to the ocean used the ocean for food. Land-based hunting was definitely part of a lot of these cultures, but if you have the resource there, they definitely utilize it. There's evidence going back thousands of years, including here on our Channel Islands, including Catalina. This one was actually found in Santa Rosa, dated back to 7,400 years ago in 1959, so that was a long time ago. It's been a very well-documented fact that humankind has been utilizing the ocean for food. And for years and years, fishing tactics was literally, you go get it. So this is pretty much in our DNA. I always liken it to a primal thing. When I'm out there and I'm chasing fish, I feel a connection to the ocean that I can't explain. It's hard to explain it because when you're in the water, you think of nothing else. You're in the moment, and it's something that lives deep down inside you, and it's a ton of fun to experience and get better at. And if you ever get into it, I highly recommend looking within yourself, and we'll talk a little bit more about the reasons we do it. Here on the island, we had the natives called the Tongva. We had a very big encampment here in two harbors, in the two harbors and Little Harbor where you guys just came from. Those were the two main encampments and villages with up to, I think I said like 2,500 people lived here on the island. This dates back 7,000 plus years ago. So there's a lot of evidence. There's middens still found around the island, and do yourself a favor and look into the history of these people. It's fascinating, and they are still around. They were obviously forced off the island, and it's a very sad story, as many of these ones are, but it's very interesting. And one neat fact that I just learned yesterday when I was researching this as well, the Tongva had a tradition where it was typically a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. The men would go out hunting, the women would go gathering, but the men who would hunt and fish, whatever they would bring home, they would not keep it for themselves. They would put it out into the community. It kept people from being greedy. So it was, our island here has a huge history of feeding everyone else before you even get fed. So it's, I try to keep that tradition alive. Ask Hannah back there. She's come over for a few dinners. And of course, throughout the world, it's been the same thing. There's been sponge divers, not really so much for eating, but for more economic stuff. But I'm sure you guys have probably heard of the Japanese ama divers. And then over on the right are the henyo. They are from, typically, most of them are around the Jeju Island area of South Korea. I took a trip there with my wife, who is Korean, 2018, and we had a wonderful experience, and we were able to dive with them, and it's absolutely amazing. These women are well into their 60s, 70s, even some into their 80s, still diving and making a living off the ocean. They are a sight to behold, and please do yourself a favor. If you can make it over there, go visit them. There's a wonderful cultural history there. More locally, one of the first real spearfishing clubs in the world was the San Diego Bottom Scratchers. I like their name. These guys obviously have some big fish on board. These are actually white sea bass. I forget who was who, but there was a group of about 8 men down in San Diego in the 1950s, just after World War II. They came back and noticed that there was not really much interest in going diving, breath hold diving, because scuba diving really wasn't even a thing back then. It was just budding. That there was really no interest in going in and harvesting, and more importantly, there was no gear. So these guys will go out there and see these giant fish and lobster and all this stuff that could be harvested. And I mean, they even invented these goggles. These guys are the pioneers of goggles that you guys wore yesterday. They made these things and saw these fish and said, hey, you know what, let's figure out how to take these animals. So they built their own guns, they designed their own guns, they did all sorts of things that were completely new. They would take old rubber hoses and lenses from dials and fabricate a mask and go diving with it. You can even see this guy has his glasses inside of his mask because he needed glasses to wear. So now we got prescription goggles, and there's companies that make all this gear. There was no such thing back then. So these were definitely pioneers and trailblazers. Somehow they managed to shoot these giant fish. I'm sure you guys have heard about the giant sea bass we have in our cove and in our waters. They grow absolutely massive. This one was 275 pounds, it says up there. But I think the largest recorded one ever taken is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 500 or 600 pounds. They are absolutely massive
3 in the
fish.
tank, right?
There's 3 in the tank up there. I'm sure you guys see them. So they start off little bitty guys, but they end up the size of a VW bug. They're absolutely massive. But one interesting story about these fish is that they're extremely slow growing and long lived. They don't reproduce very well. They do enough, but they were easily overfished because of their natural tendency to look at divers like, oh, and people were like, oh, there's a 500-pound fish. Take it, and then, oh, well, now there's no 500-pound fish anymore. So they became critically endangered. And through the efforts of spearfishermen and conservationists, they were put on there's been a moratorium put on them. So no longer are you allowed to take them in the United States at all. You can still get them down in Mexico, but here in California, we just get to go swim with them. And every now and then, there's one right underneath the dock. We actually caught it on the underwaterexplorer.org camera the other day. It's kind of cool. Couple things about this book. I have it floating right here. This was written by a guy named Terry Moss. He's a conservationist as well as a world record holding spearfisher. As those guys before the bottom scratchers put the equipment together, there was really no written account of how it was done. This was the first real effort to write everything down. So this book has all sorts of stories, pictures, descriptions on how to build guns, how to build floats, all the equipment that you see over to your right. There's detailed descriptions on how to make it, how to use it, how to build it, and if you get into spearfishing, you'll definitely want a copy of that to reference for all sorts of different things. And luckily, he's still around today, and he's actually on my my executive board with the Neptune, so I get to talk to him. Actually, I got a meeting with him tomorrow. Super nice guy. So, spearfishing, typically it can be done in any body of water. In California, we're actually not allowed to spearfish in freshwater. So all spearfishing in California is done in saltwater. Obviously, I live on Catalina, so right smack dab in the middle of the Southern California Bight. And so this is where I'm most familiar with diving. I've dove a couple other places, but never really spearfished. I've actually only spearfished here on Catalina. I've only dove the mainland once, but there's a very vibrant spearfishing community all up and down the coast, from San Diego all the way up to Humboldt County. These guys dive for, well, they used to dive for abalone, but no longer. There used to be an abalone fishery down here. Same story. It just basically became decimated, and it was a moratorium has been put on the green abs down here, and a temporary moratorium up there. We'll see. I think they're going with a reevaluation soon. So, moral of the story is we try to keep fish for the future. We want to make sure that the next person after us is able to harvest what we have. So being greedy is just going to hurt you and your kids and your kids' kids. So a big thing about diving is the mitigation of bycatch. Bycatch, the unwanted fish and other marine creatures caught during commercial and recreational fishing for a different species. So I'm sure you guys have probably seen videos of those big trawling boats, and there's, you know, fish and birds and all stuff flying off of this stuff, and all for a certain species within that trawl. You never know what they're actually going for. Each individual fisherman and or person is going for, but bycatch is definitely one of the worst things about all other forms of fishing. One of the biggest offenders for bycatch is bottom trawling. As the little diagram shows, it's pretty straightforward. Big net attached to the back of a boat, and have these big heavy weights that keep them on the bottom, and they literally just sweep the bottom, pulling everything indiscriminately up from the bottom and ending up with just a pile of unusable stuff. Can you guess what they were fishing for on here?
Lobster?
Shrimp. So when they got shrimp, they also got a ton of clams, big shark.
Do they put those back?
Yeah,
Oh, they're
but
dead.
they're most likely dead. That's the problem. There is unintended catch, and by the time you get it up, it's been wrapped up in a net, not able to swim freely, not able to breathe the ocean water, and maybe some of these clams might survive, but for the most part, that shark's most likely not going to live. It's honestly, like I said, the worst culprit as far as bycatch is concerned. Another one is longline fishing. Longline fishing is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically a long monofilament line that can stretch up to 3 or 4 miles out in the ocean. They got buoys and these baited hooks, and they just put it out there, let it drift for however long they want, and then haul it back in. And of course, as the little diagram shows, all sorts of different things get caught. They might be targeting tuna, but they're also catching sharks and rays and dolphins and all of these and turtles. So it happens. It's just part of, unfortunately, part of that method of take. Another really detrimental one, especially for here in the Southern California area, is gill net fishing. Gill net fishing, you probably see the guys who are throwing out the nets into the shallow waters and picking up the fish. That is a type of gill net, but the ones that are really, really detrimental are these drifting gill nets. And what happens is they set them up, they let them float out there for a while, and of course anything that swims into them can't swim out because it catches on their gill plates. They get stuck, they drown, and they haul it back in. And all sorts of stuff gets entangled. You've got molas up there on the right, a thresher shark down here on the bottom right, sea lions, turtles, all sorts of different things. And what's even worse is if those buoys pop or gets cut off from the whole system, now this gill net drops to the bottom and continues killing forever because this monofilament doesn't degrade. It just stays down there and just does all sorts of terrible things to the ecosystem. One of our big things that has happened over the years has been the effective banning of gill nets inshore near shore within 3 miles. So that happened in the 1990s, and ever since then, pinniped population, the shark populations, and more importantly for us, our spearfishers, the white sea bass population has rebounded incredibly. This white sea bass is one of the most coveted and treasured and sought after fish for a spearfisher. It's a very large, tasty, but elusive fish to catch. And the fishery was on the verge of collapse, and they realized that the gill nets were just wiping out entire schools of these white sea bass indiscriminately. And with this gill net ban, it allowed the fishery to rebound incredibly, so much so that just 3 days ago, our spearfishing club had to raise the bar for a certain level of reward. We call it the King Neptune. A yellowtails over 30 pounds speared, a white sea bass at the time 50, now 60 pounds, and a fish over 100 pounds. So we actually had to raise our limit because so many people have been shooting 50-pound white sea bass. I just saw one get shot by my buddy today, 57 pounds, and he's like, oh man, they just changed the rules on them. So it is what it is. But it shows you proper fishery management can really help with rebounding of species on the verge of collapse. And luckily here in California we have one of the most well policed, regulated fisheries in the world. So if you are out there fishing, please abide by the rules. Those fishing game guys like to hand out tickets like they're going out of style. So sustainable spearfishing, like I was talking about, it is not indiscriminate, it is selective. We go out with an idea of what we want to bring home. Every time I go out, I say, okay, well, what am I going to bring to go catch, and what do I want to catch? And the other day I was out spearfishing, and I had second from the last gun on the right with me, and was like, oh, I was seeing these smaller fish that were right next to the rocks. I'm like, no, I don't need those guys. I got too big of a gun. So I'm very selective on what I'm going for. I'm not just going out, blasting everything that I see, because it's not what it's about. I want to take 1 or 2 fish to feed myself and my friends, and it really makes a big difference being able to, like I said, go in there, take what you want, take care of that fish, and then bring it back home. And unlike most hook and line fishing, which is catch and release, we actually release and catch. Release by not pulling the trigger. I see tens of thousands of fish on every single dive, whether they're this big or sharks come to eat me. I only catch the ones I want. I'm not just hoping that something is going to bite my hook, my bait, whatever it is. So I am releasing all those fish and catching only what I want. That's the selective release and catch. There's also zero bycatch. Even recreational fishing, you have to co-catch bait, and you go co-catch squid or mackerel or something like that, put it on the end of your line, and hope that that big fish that you're targeting comes to get that. Well, what happens if they don't come eat that? Well, now you've just killed this fish for bait. So there is zero bycatch when you're going spearfishing. You're just going out there holding your breath, and even if you don't catch anything or don't shoot anything that day, you had a wonderful time, got a little bit of exercise, working off this beer belly, and just enjoying the wonderful underwater world that you guys saw yesterday. And I still enjoy swimming even without a spear gun. That's why I started getting into filming, and that's something else I'll talk about later. Spearfishing compromises less than 1% of the total catch in the whole world. It's a very, very niche sport. Obviously, sport fishing is pretty huge throughout the entire world, but commercial fishing takes the lion's share of most fish and stuff harvested from the ocean. Not just fish, but just all that kind of stuff. So commercial fishing, like I said, it's definitely the biggest culprit in bycatch and all that stuff, because it has to be a financially viable thing. It's understandable, but it's not good. There has to be a better way. I haven't figured it out. Nobody has yet. We're still working on it. This is the way I figured it out. I go to catch my own fish, and I try not to eat any other fish that I have not taken. Every now and then I'll spurge to go get some sushi, but that's just because I can't catch wahoo over here. One of these days I'll go for a trip and go get some Another thing with spearfishing is typically we catch a lot less fish every time we go out. I see a lot of big party boats, we call them, with all the guys on the back deck, and they're catching these fish. Oh, cool, I got a 5 fish limit. Boom, oh, they're going off. You're pulling fish on the deck. Boom, now I got 5 fish on the deck. And then, okay, now I've limited up. That fish has been sitting in the hot sun for the past half hour, 45 minutes. It's not really very well taken care of. When you're spearfishing, you're risking your life. You're holding your breath. You're, chasing these fish in, as they call them, shark-infested waters. All waters have sharks. But you really appreciate whatever you're taking out of the ocean that much more, because you are down there and actually witnessing what is happening. So you really want to take care of every last little bit of it. The other day I made fish skin chips, which was amazing. But you can use the fish bones to make stock. You can use the, every last little bit. You can eat the roe on those things. Some things you just literally can't eat, but you can use most of the fish. And when you have less of the fish and it's a better quality, you're more inclined to use the entire fish, not just like the prime fillets. Another big reason I do spearfishing is because it also gives you an awareness of the impact on the ecosystem. When you're down in the water and you see a school of fish come up and you take this fish out of the school, you literally see one less fish in that school. When you're on top of the water with a hook and a reel and whatnot, and you just, oh, now it's tugging. It could have been a single fish, it could have been 10,000 fish, but you never get a real sense of what you're pulling from the ocean. When you actually see it, look at eye to eye, because these guns do not have a very long range, you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, I'm selecting that one fish to take, harvest, and bring it back. So you have a real connection, very visceral connection to the ocean. Spearfishing gear. Obviously, there's all sorts of stuff. Like I was talking about the people, bottom scratchers, who were pioneers of development of all this gear. Obviously, we're piecemealing it together. Nowadays, there's been a lot of advances in manufacturing and a lot of spearfishing specific brands out there. Obviously, here in Southern California, we need some sort of thermal protection. You guys probably felt the water yesterday. It was kind of chilly. Yeah, without a wetsuit, you're not going to last very long. And so this one's only 3 mils, but the ones you guys were wearing were 7 mil. So super, like, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. These are actually spearfishing specific. They are designed to be much more stretchy. They're a little bit funky because you actually got to lube yourself up with conditioner to get into them. But once they're on, they're super comfy, super stretchy, and super warm. Obviously, you guys also used our fantastic fins yesterday. These are a little bit better and more expensive than your fins. These are made of carbon fiber. There's a bunch of different types of materials that are used. There's plastics, there's fiberglass, but top end ones are carbon fiber, and get you moving pretty good. As you probably could tell, those fish are way better swimmers than you could ever be. So we're never really chasing fish when we're out there. We're putting ourselves in the best possible position to catch whatever we desire to take. These just get us there much more efficiently than normal. Of course, without a mask and snorkel, can't see anything, but these are also free diving specific masks, much lower volume, makes it a little bit easier to equalize. Since we're not on scuba, we don't have a virtually unlimited supply of air in your back. We want to use that air as sparingly as possible and the most efficiently as possible. Knife, definitely you'll see a lot of it later on in the presentation, but this thing can save your life, and it'll also help dispatch your fish humanely, quickly, and always have a good knife, and always put a lanyard on it, because the knife that falls out of your hand is no good, so always put it on your wrist. A light, it's nice and bright, sorry. We go night hunting sometimes. I'll go out, and you guys are going to go do a night snorkel tonight. You'll see all the lobsters walking around. During the season, which just ended in March, it starts in October, runs through March, 6 months on, 6 months off, we are allowed to take lobsters. As you can see on top of this light, we also have a little gauge. So each of the lobsters has to be minimum of 3 1/4 inch at carapace length. So I'm sure Anand will talk a little bit more about those guys, but you obviously have to follow all the rules, so that's why I got that on there. The spear guns. you can see there's a pretty large variety in size. So if you were shooting, let's say, a halibut that's sitting on the bottom of the ocean, like 2 feet in front of you, you think I'd want to use this big gun? Probably not. So that's why I got a little gun. And if I was going after, you know, a big yellowtail that's 35 feet away, you'd think I want a little pea shooter to go with me? No. So it's kind of the nature of being a spearfisher. You start becoming a gear addict. And as you can see, I got a couple things, and this is only like half of my spear guns. And then I got like another 4 sets of fins and 3 other wetsuits and all this kind of stuff. So it just ends up becoming a good addiction, but it's definitely a money sink. But you buy good gear, it lasts forever. Something like this would run about $1,300 brand new. I try to find them used. I think I paid $900 for that, and then all the way down to like these little aluminum pipe guns, we call them, the rail guns. They're much more inexpensive. This is actually my wife's gun. I got this used for like $50. So for the more budget friendly, you can definitely go there. But once you start getting into it, you realize that stuff like this doesn't last a long time. You spend the money, you'll never actually have to buy it again as long as you take good care of it. So, you know, it's worth the money to spend. Spear gun, quick rundown of how it works. We got a slip tip on this kind. Some of them have floppers. In any case, they go through whatever your target is and then allow the fish to fight around without ripping itself out. This provides a little bit more surface area. And of course it goes to a shaft. The shaft is what you're shooting at the fish. This thing holds on in front like so. You pull the trigger, it's gonna go click. That thing's gonna fly out and go hopefully into a nice big yellowtail or white sea bass. And then this is 400-pound monofilament. And I'm sure you heard me talking about the monofilament earlier. A lot of fishermen will just cut the monofilament and just kind of throw it out there. This stuff, we don't do that. We take it all with us. We crimp it. It's not just tossed out, so much less plastic in the ocean. We don't have lures that get hooked into the kelp and all that stuff. Worst comes to worst, we might bend a shaft, but we can go get a new one and it's just steel, so it can be recycled. This ends up attached to either a couple types of float lines. This allows me to fight the fish. After I've shot the fish, it swims away. I got to get back up to the surface and start breathing again. I'm not a fish myself, so once I get back up to the surface, I can start breathing, and this allows me to fight the fish. If the fish is too strong for me, I have the ability to use a float sometimes. If I'm in the kelp, I can't drag a float through the kelp, so I got to be cautious of that. On my float line, I even have little markers. You can see that pink line. That means I got 20 feet left. Better stop that fish from running. And there's also different sizes when it comes to this kind of stuff. So this is what we call a hard line. It doesn't have any stretch, virtually none. This is a bungee line. This has quite a bit of stretch. When we start chasing large fish, they're so powerful that they'll actually rip that spear right back out through their body. So this allows for some stretch, so when it comes taut at the end of the line, it doesn't go smack and just rip itself out. That allows for up to 2 times the stretch to cushion that shock. So it's all very specific, and like I said, if I'm going for a halibut, I got a little reel gun, stuff like that, much more compact that I can just take with me so that it's not overkill. You don't want to shoot your $1,200 gun right in the dirt. It's gonna break stuff. So that's the basics of spearfishing gear. Of course, there's boats and all the electronics that go on there that help you find where you're going, maybe a fish finder, stuff like that. But the biggest piece of equipment you have is yourself, your brain. Knowing where you're going to be looking for, what you're going to be looking for, and of course, being able to get yourself in the proper position to be successful. A couple of the common targeted species out here. We got halibut. You guys see any halibut on your swim yesterday? No. Might see one tonight. You never know. Calicos, you probably did see a bunch of those. sheephead. See a bunch of those. And then we have a little bit more semi-pelagics with the yellowtail and the white sea bass down here. These are typically the most two targeted fish for spearfishers here in the Southern California area. Of course, like I said, those top three are more ubiquitous. They're kind of just around year round. These guys are a little bit more seasonal. As we come into the summer months, we're actually starting to see some. Like I said, I saw a guy shoot a big old white sea bass today, so it's on. I'm going out on Tuesday. Yeah. So we also have transient or exotic species. So these guys only come for very short periods during the year. So we have yellowfin tuna. Very seldomly do they make it this far up, but every now and then they do. Wahoo, during those El Nino years when it was extremely warm, they were being caught right off of Avalon, so they were well within our waters. Those Dorado, mahi-mahi, dolphin fish, whatever you want to call them, those are basically once the water warms past about 70, 72 degrees Fahrenheit, it turns on. And then one of the most impressive fish are those top right ones, the bluefin tuna. I'm sure you guys have heard the big bluefin tuna. Don't eat the bluefin. Well, our bluefin are not the ones that are critically endangered. They are still on the least concern, and there's actually a very healthy fishery. The fishery has come back in amazing fashion. The last time we've had conditions and fish like this was over 100 years ago. There was virtually no bluefin over 20 pounds taken in the past 80 years, and then 5 years ago people started shooting 200-pound fish out there. Massive, massive fish. I myself have yet to shoot one. I'm still working on it. I'm getting there. Many, many trips, many, many dollars of gas burned. Speaking of which, putting the puzzle together. Obviously, the ocean is very large. It takes up 3/4 of the earth, right? And most of it is pretty barren, desert. Trying to find what you're looking for out there is a needle in a haystack effort. And so using whatever kind of information you can get, whether it's reports from your friends, online graphs showing you water temperatures, chlorophyll counts, all these kind of things. So certain fish, like I was saying, they like certain temperatures. So if you see a break of 65-degree water with 70-degree water, that's probably a good indicator that there's going to be some fish there. Also water clarity over on the top, on the right graph, chlorophyll. So right now you guys probably saw there's some pretty green water out there. During the summertime when it actually clears up, we get like very, very blue, 120-foot visibility. It's absolutely gorgeous out here. And it's like that color of water right there, that's basically what color the water is. So we hope for the days like that to come soon, but typically this time of year it's not so good. We also put more pieces in the puzzle, like I was saying, fish reports. This is a website called Fish Dope. People send in information about these fish, where they were caught, when they were caught, what was caught, and it helps you to put a plan together for what you're doing. And then all that being said, then you got to look at your tide charts and your moon phases. So there's all these different pieces of this puzzle you're trying to wrap around your head to give you the best shot at what you're looking for. Remember, you have finite resources. You might only have a day or two to fish. You only have so many gallons of fuel, so much water in the boat. You need to make the most of your time. So being able to come up with a plan before you even leave the dock or even leave your house is key. So it's not just go out there and just hope that something's going to bite your face off. So I got a couple quick videos. Like I was saying, the whole release and catch thing earlier. Sometimes you'll see fish that are undersized, and well, if you caught them on your hook and line, you might actually do some damage to them by pulling them up. They could swallow the lure, do some damage to their intestines or whatnot. So instead of that, you get to see, swim around. Oh look, little white sea bass, just swimming along. You hear that? That's me. I'm actually trying to call it over. So some fish are curious. You start And they're like, hey, what are you doing? Oh, hey, you're something I've never seen before. And they'll come. I'll show you a video later where they completely like 90 degree come at you. This one, well, you'll see, this is kind of a cool one because, again,
how deep are you?
this one I'm just leaving the surface. Typically I'm hunting between 15 to 35, 40 feet down. That's a giant sea bass. Look what the color it is. What's below it? Look, there's another one. It's a completely different color. What do you think's going on there?
Romance.
Yeah. Having some good times there. So yeah, and it's kind of neat. Like again, had they bit my rod and reel line and brought them up, and then I would have destroyed their little romance party there. But I also could have damaged the fish, and that's no good. So again, I'm releasing and then catching only what I want. So another thing is to consider when to take that shot. If you are not sure that you're going to have a solid shot that will hold, because these fish fight hard, which you'll see shortly. If you're not sure that you're going to get a good shot, you want to hold off until you actually get a solid shot, because if you miss or wound the fish and it breaks off, that's just as bad as just killing it and throwing it in the trash. It's not what we want. We want to be able to take whatever we want. So this is out at Shiprock. You guys went to Bird Rock today. This is the further one out. And then there's just a huge pile of yellowtail just came in really fast, and I wasn't ready. And I was like, well, you know what? I didn't have a really good opportunity. I'll just wait, because I know that they're around. And hopefully we'll see them come back again, which is this one. Listen for that little croaking. And look what they do when I croak. They're swimming away. Oh my God. So now I've shot the fish, and this is where things get interesting. Because I look over, check my surroundings, and what do I see? A sea lion. Thought it was a shark at first. I was like, well, it's still a sea lion. Still very dangerous. 300-pound animal that's a way better swimmer and holds his breath way better than I ever could. Is wanting my fish. So you can hear me, fish on! Just telling my buddy that's in the water that, hey, I have a fish on and I'm dealing with the situation over here. Come help. And sometimes you manage to break its spine or hit it in the brain and completely put the lights out. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. So the fight ensues. Like I was showing you that monofilament. There's that monofilament. There's that white float line. I'm pulling up on the monofilament, trying to get it close.
How big is that fish?
We'll see. But
Okay.
it also runs, and it's not, they don't go easily. Yellowtail fight really hard.
You're holding your breath this whole time?
No, I'm on the surface.
Oh.
So as soon as I shoot it, you saw me go right back up, say fish on, put my snorkel back in my mouth, so now I'm able to fight it from the surface.
I got it.
So now I can still breathe. But you can see, it's still going crazy. I got lines going all over the place. If that fish were to wrap my foot and swim off, which it almost did right here, you'll see, like, oh, there, whoop, I'll get caught. Grab that thing, and you end up with a nice fish.
Whoa.
So,
How much does that fish weigh?
that one was about 25 pounds or so. Not huge, but sizable. Yes, sir.
Would you consider the fish you catch like sushi grade? Would you eat it raw?
Yes. I eat most of my yellowtail raw, if not all. I can try. I try not to cook it at all. So those were yellowtail. And like I said, the other one we mainly target are sea bass. This is a really cool clip because this was a schooling school of sea bass, which is not very common. You typically see them in pairs, small schools, but this was a giant congregation of them. As I go down, you'll be able to hear, because this is the raw video, you can hear at the very beginning there'll be like a little bit of a boat whine because I was near the surface and the boats are going back and forth. But as soon as I get down, that boat wind fades and you'll start hearing a little bit of rumbling. These sea bass are actually croakers. They're what they call the king of the croakers. They actually have a hair bladder with a muscle right along the side. Only the males croak, but they vibrate. It's like a big drum, and it goes. I can't even do it. I don't have the muscle. So what you'll start hearing is like it sounds almost like a motor, but it's actually all these sea bass because they were in a courtship thing. So I was the bad guy and kind of ruined the party. But I only took a single fish, and so this was out actually at Bird Rock where you guys were kayaking around today. You can hear it up there. It's very faint. Works better with headphones. So, unfortunately, our eyes are way better than the GoPros are, but that's a big old school white sea bass. A lot of people will never see that in their lives. And yeah.
When was that?
That was 4 years ago, something like that. We also catch lobster, which you're going to see a bunch of them tonight.
Oh yeah.
Do you eat those raw too?
No, you can, but I don't like them raw. I actually don't eat a lot of lobster. They're very rich, and I've had so many over the years that I actually catch them, and then I'll make something like every, I don't know, 2-3 months, and then I'm like, okay, that's my fill. So I don't really go after lobster as much as I used to. I just thinking about it, it's just like, oh, it's a lot of flavor. It's good, it's really good, but I only take what I can get. So this is a limit of lobster, all 7. Limit is 7 per day per diver, and like I said, they need to be a minimum size. Oh, one last thing I didn't talk about was equipment, the GoPro. This is where all this video is coming from. This GoPro, it looks kind of silly, but I'm sure you've seen those head mounts. Those head mounts work until you go into the water, and then the water will actually knock the GoPros off. So they came up with these little chin straps that go like that, so that it can't come up. So you put your mask on, you put this on top. There's other companies that make masks with GoPro mounts, but I don't like that because if the GoPro catches on something, it could rip the mask off my face. So I like something that is completely separate from my mask, and if I want to pull it off and take a video of somebody else. They also make gun mount GoPros, so if you look up videos online, there's a variety of different angles. So that's kind of lobster. I like lobster, but not that much. I've been doing this for a long time. This is me, old hippie hair. Look at that.
Wow.
Yeah. That was a 56 pound or something like that, so it was a nice big fish. That's about the size of the fish that my buddy shot today. And I'm still doing it. This are both from last year. That was a 52 and that was a like 45, something like that. Actually, one of these is in the video. Actually, I think they're both in the videos. So, yeah, good. And we also get yellowtail. This is actually my personal best yellowtail. This is 48.8 pounds. A very, very large yellowtail. Typically, you don't get them more than like 30, 35 pounds. And I have managed to shoot this monster of a fish. I have it on my YouTube page. Click like and subscribe.
You need the name.
I'll get you there. I'll get you there. And of course, my lovely wife, she also spearfishes. She's a rock star. And see that thing? That's a 27-pound yellowtail. She caught it all herself. I did nothing. I videotaped it.
So, could a fish take her for a ride, or you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I've almost been killed by a 15-pound yellowtail.
15 pounds.
1.5.
Really?
They're very strong, very.
Of course, you're way lighter in the water.
You're much lighter in the water, but if they, like I said, if they wrap your fin and they wrap themselves in the kelp, you're now hooked up to the kelp. The kelp doesn't break so easy.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very dangerous sport. A lot of people, dismiss it as, you're just going to go down there and, shoot a fish and come back up. No, there's, like I showed you, that fish almost wrapped my leg and almost did some serious damage. I'll start moving quickly, but that's close to the end of it. I got a couple videos, but in the end, one of the best things is phenomenal food. We got spicy yellowtail with a bunch of good stuff all over it. And then sushi, my dog looking at it because she wants it really bad. And then your normal sushi, and then pankoed and the collars and all the sushi you could eat. It's ridiculous. So that's the end of the lecture, but there's more. As a hobby, when I go out, like I said, I have that GoPro running. I'm able to catch all sorts of cool stuff in the water, some amazing stuff that most people never get to see. And as a fun thing to do when there's not very good visibility or I got enough fish in the freezer, I make videos. So I'm going to go ahead and self-proclaim it. You can just look up Juan-Carlos Aguilar. I think it's Isthmus Juan or something like that. I'll have Anand send it to you, but I got some videos.
I'll show you.
I think it's time to blow this scene. Get everything stuck together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Kind of hard to see the yellowtail. Like I said, your eyes are way better than GoPro ever could be. But trust me, they're out there. On the giant sea bass. Two hands. You got like this. It kicks like a rifle. It's got a pretty good kick. Each of those bands takes about 80 to 90 pounds to pull back. It's not a big school yellowtail. Now when there's no fish around, you get to make cool shots like this.
You just put it on the brand of product.
I think you guys will recognize this. Fish weighed 52 pounds. Shot at about 45 feet down. You notice how it's different than the yellowtail, not completely fighting. They're just not as hard fighting. They typically will go down, and they're normally not out in the open. You're normally finding them in the kelp. I'll show you another video where they are normally found. And so this one, remember how I was telling you about that sea lion? Well, this time there's a bunch of sea lions. This is at Bird Rock where you guys are at today. Got it right there. What's that?
They're not afraid of you. Like,
Not at all.
oh,
No, they get swamped.
So normally you never see yellowtail nearby those guys, but there happened to be a school yellowtail right underneath them. And one, what's that?
Usually they eat.
Yeah. So they do like yellowtail. What do you think's gonna happen? So then I realized, well, wait, what happened to all those sea lions?
You bought it for him. Thank you very much.
Again, fish on!
Fish off.
So now I'm watching as a dozen sea lions all fight over my fish that's wrapped up in the kelp 50 feet down, and I can't do a thing about it. So,
Will they attack you if you like take it?
yeah, we'll see.
You have to claim your game.
You can't let them have it. If you let them get trained that it's easy meal, you got to fight for what you write. So it managed to grab my fish, but I'm still attached.
What's left of it?
So now I'm in a tug of war with a 28-pound yellowtail and a 350-pound sea lion. So I got to make sure I don't get the line wrapped around me. You see me? It's a tug of war.
He's got the tail, I think, right?
Yeah.
He's got his tail in the mouth.
So I grab my knife.
Maybe he's just saying use your fish. I brought it up for you.
He did all the hard work. I tried to tell him to go away. To no avail.
Can you reverse the
And what
spear
happens?
and
He
poke
takes
it?
off. What happened if my leg was wrapped there? I would have been drugged off and drowned. Just that quick. So being very line conscious.
So if that happened, you just cut your line.
That's why I have my knife in my hand.
Another one.
No, luckily. Knock on wood. So my friend luckily came and spooked it and let go of the fish.
He released it.
Yeah. And it came back ready.
Was there a lot of damage done to that?
Surprisingly, no.
Yes.
So this is Victoria. She works here too. She's a spearfisher as well. And look, another juvenile white sea bass. See how it's all barred up? They get different colors. The females will bar themselves up when they're mating. Kind of neat. Another giant sea bass. Yeah. Feel free to ask questions. Yeah, what's up?
Is it better to spearfish at reefs because there's a lot more stuff, or they're just bigger fish where I'm fish?
So reefs typically hold more fish because of the upwelling effect. What happens is the water's currents hits a reef, gets jetted up into shallower water, and starts a food chain. Plankton, small fish eat, and then eat the plankton. You guys know all about it. All right, so reefs can be very productive. However, it's not necessarily always like that. When we're going out in the blue, like for those bluefin, we actually look for bait balls, and they're just completely out in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, so next question. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you like fillet and process all your fish yourself?
I fillet and process all my own fish. I got a vacuum sealer and all that. So if
Actually, there's a really good video I show when we fillet.
oh yeah.
Yeah, your filleting video. I'll show you guys one.
It's not
No, you will.
Have you had any shark encounters?
I have not had a direct encounter with a large shark. I've run into a handful of taupe sharks or whatever you want to call tube-fin sharks, but no makos or gray whites. My buddy did while I was in the water, and we jumped out of the water, and I was probably dry by the time I hit the deck. I was like, ah! So, yeah, they're out there. Every time I go out, I'm I'm human. I think about it when I'm out there and I can't see the bottom, which is most of the time. I got that little voice in the back of your head. You just kind of slide it down. Exactly.
Is there a limit?
On
Do you have a limit
on what?
on the number of like how many white sea bass you use?
Yes. So there is a limit, a daily limit that is normally 3, but from March 15th to June 15th, it drops down to 1 because this is their breeding season. So this is typically when they're in the kelp. As you can see, they're thick in the kelp. So they're in there doing their breeding. So this is when they're the most vulnerable. So that and there's also a minimum size limit of 28 inches. So they have to be at least this big to be able to shoot a white sea bass. Yellowtail, not so much. Yeah.
How often do you eat fish?
3 times a week, 2-3 times at least. Yeah.
How long can you hold your breath for?
My personal record's just around 4 minutes.
Is that like average?
Average for normal people is about 2 minutes. And I can do 2 minutes in the water swimming, like actively. So this is another cool little thing. 'Cause I had shot the fish and was just swimming back to the boat. And I was like, oh, hey.
Accidentally tried to catch a certain fish and they got something else.
No. That's the nice thing about the selectiveness of it. I've accidentally shot 2 fish of the same kind that I was going for because these guns can be powerful, and if they're really close, it'll go right through it and hit a second one. So I shot 2, I think it was a 38 and a 33-pound yellowtail at once. And yeah, so it was like 75 pounds of fish that I was fighting. And they were both going different directions, which actually helped. Yeah.
Were you able to?
I was able to get both of them. What's funny is the first one I pretty much stoned, killed, and the second one I didn't even see, and I thought the first one was getting eaten by a sea lion, and I was pulling it up. I was like, oh look,
Don't buy balloons.
yeah. So whenever I don't shoot fish, I also collect balloons from the ocean, dude. I think I got 13 this day. But this one,
13?
yeah. In this bed, just in this bed. This one's got a smiley face, my favorite.
It's an avocado.
Yeah, it says let's avocado. That's it. So this was a fish that I shot during one of our spearfishing tournaments. It's a 38-pound yellowtail, and yeah, it was sketchy, but yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
So besides spearfishing, what's the most sustainable way to
Hook and line fishing, recreational hook and line fishing is.
like a mass product? Like if I go to the grocery store, what should I look for?
You should look more for certain types of fish that have a very fast growth rate. Dorado are wonderful for that. They have a very high, I forget the exact term, but whatever they eat, they turn into weight. Certain type, avoid like farm salmon, most cod. Yeah. But there are, oh gosh, what is, I think you had the little card.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Their Monterey Bay Aquarium has these seafood cards.
Yeah.
And the red, orange, and green, and it gives you a guide, and they put them out every few months. Gives you a guide of what to eat, and there's some regional basis as well. They're little cards. You can also download the app as well. You look for certifications like MSC certified. You gotta ask questions. I think
Yeah.
the main point that Juan made is that you go to a restaurant or you go to the market, the way we're gonna change is you demand information from the person who's selling you, whether it's a fishmonger or at the restaurant, because some staff will say, well, I don't know. I'm saying, well, I'd like to know.
Yeah.
And if more people do that, then
It becomes a normal thing.
so
You make it part of the culture.
It becomes part of the culture.
Yeah.
You gotta do that for the first one.
Yeah. You might seem like a jerk at first, but if everybody does it, it's
Yeah.
just going to be a normal thing.
Yeah, you gotta that's behavioral change.
Any other questions? I know you guys are 5 minutes from lunch.
Spear fishermen do this on a commercial basis?
There is a commercial spearfishing in many other states. California, it is possible, but it's very difficult to do. Got to jump through a lot of red hoops, red tape hoops. Yes, there is a commercial spearfishing market. So, well, yeah.
What if one of these cool young people want to learn to spearfish?
Oh.
Or free dive, what should they do?
I would highly suggest, number one, going and contacting your local dive club. The Neptunes are awesome. And there's also a variety of other spearfishing clubs here in the Southern California area. Also, look into taking a free dive safety course. A free diving course will get you into the water much more comfortable and safer. And then, of course, just spend time in the water and learn what you can. Start reading books like the Free Dive and Spearfishing. Contact people who you know do it. Look up videos online. Look up my videos. Any kind of stuff like that. Just educate yourself as much as possible. It will just make your experience that much better. And most importantly, find a mentor. Find somebody else who's been doing this and has the knowledge who can pass it on to you. One of the biggest things in our club is we require everybody to have a sponsor even before they join the club. So that means they have somebody who's telling them how to do these things so that the learning curve is much shorter and it's also safer. So please be careful and be safe, and if you guys do decide to do it, feel free to contact me. I'll happily talk to you and point you in the right direction.
Do people ever
Right, you
scuba?
guys.
Do people scuba do
Yeah,
this, or is it all free diving?
mostly free diving, but there is a pretty healthy community of scuba divers who do spearfish. It's kind of generally frowned upon, and because people think it's cheating, it's a different challenge. But I prefer free diving because it is what it says. It's free. You're relying on yourself. So, all right, guys, you guys got dinner in 5 minutes.
Thank you, John.